Captain Alexander Alex Drake was a man of many talents. He was a strategist, a leader, and a war hero who had earned the respect of his peers and the fear of his enemies. His name was known throughout the galaxy, not just for his skills in battle, but for his calm under pressure and his unshakable resolve. But none of that had prepared him for this. The grand hall of the Zoreth Empire's palace was like nothing he had ever seen. It was a place where every inch of the floor, every wall, and every chandelier seemed designed to inspire awe. Towering alien trees with silver leaves stretched toward the high ceilings, casting their shadows across the stone floor. The people, alien ambassadors, military leaders, and dignitaries from across the galaxy, moved like a shimmering sea, their rich attire glittering in the soft light. But none of that mattered to Alex in this moment. His eyes were fixed on one person, one being who stood out among them all. Princess Alira Zoreth was everything Alex had expected from a woman of her status. Tall, elegant, and breathtakingly beautiful, her silver-blue skin shimmered in the soft glow of the palace. Her eyes were large and luminous, a deep shade of violet, reflecting the wisdom and weight of her royal heritage. She was the daughter of the Empress of Zorath, a dynasty that spanned galaxies. To the Zorath people, she was a living symbol of their strength, intelligence, and unparalleled beauty. But to Alex, she was something more. She was something untouchable. The banquet was grand, and the music was mesmerizing, but Alex couldn't focus on anything except the princess. His mind was consumed by the question that had been racing through his head since the moment he stepped onto this alien planet. Why does she fascinate me so? As the night wore on, Alex found himself alone at the edge of the room, nursing a drink he barely tasted. He wasn't antisocial, but he wasn't comfortable with the opulence surrounding him. The Zoreth Empire was a marvel of technological advancement and ancient tradition, but the politics of it all were more than he cared to dive into. He had been sent here on a diplomatic mission, not to play the role of a Prince Charming. Still, his thoughts kept drifting back to Alira. Her laughter echoed across the hall, but it wasn't the kind of laughter one would expect from a royal, distant and cold. No, hers was genuine, the kind of sound that seemed to carry the weight of emotions long buried. He felt an overwhelming desire to know her, to understand her, but he knew that would never happen, not for someone like him. It was then, as if the universe itself had decided to play a trick on him, that Alira turned. Her violet eyes met his, and in that moment everything around him seemed to fade away. The bustling sounds of the crowd, the clinking of glasses, and the soft hum of the music, they all disappeared. Her gaze locked onto his, and he swore the air between them crackled with something he couldn't name, something dangerous. Without missing a beat, she walked toward him. Each step was deliberate, graceful, like the movement of a predator on the hunt. Alex stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The princess was coming to him. Why? What did she want? When she reached him, her presence was overwhelming. The room seemed to shrink in her presence, and for a moment Alex wondered if this was all a dream. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft but carried a weight that seemed to echo through his very bones. "I couldn't help but notice you," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "Your eyes, they hold the same depth as the stars themselves." Alex opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He hadn't expected her to speak to him, let alone compliment him. I wasn't sure what to think of you," she continued, her tone more thoughtful now. "A human among us. How strange it is to see someone from your world standing here as if you belong." He couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. She had noticed him. She wasn't repulsed by his presence. But before he could formulate a response, she smiled, a smile that was not just polite but something deeper, something that made Alex's heart race, his pulse quicken. "Tell me, Captain Drake," she said, her voice soft but steady. "What is it that you seek from the Zoreth Empire? Is it power, knowledge, or perhaps something more personal?" Alex swallowed hard. He hadn't been prepared for this kind of conversation. "I came here for peace," he replied, trying to maintain his composure, "to negotiate terms that will ensure the safety of my people." "Peace," she mused, tilting her head slightly. "A noble goal, but you are human, aren't you? So, do you believe in love?" The question caught him off guard. What did love have to do with anything? They were not equals. He was just a soldier and she was a princess, an untouchable figurehead. The idea of love between them seemed ludicrous. But then, as if sensing his hesitation, she took a step closer. "I have seen the way you look at me, Captain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You may not admit it, but I know." For a moment, Alex couldn't breathe. Her words had a weight he hadn't anticipated. He had been so careful not to show any emotion, yet she had seen through him like a blade cutting through fabric. And then she whispered, almost as if to herself, "I wish I could marry you." The words were so soft, so unexpected that Alex thought for a moment he had imagined them. But Alira's gaze was steady, her lips curving into a faint, almost wistful smile. He stared at her in disbelief. "What did you say?" Alira tilted her head slightly, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "You heard me. I said I wish I could marry you." Alex couldn't find the words to respond. It felt as though his world had shifted beneath him. The princess of the Zoreth Empire, an impossibility in every sense, had just confessed a desire that seemed as far beyond reach as the stars themselves. But it was not a game. He could see it in her eyes, the depth of her words, the truth behind them. And for a brief moment he felt something stirring deep within him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Could it be possible? Could someone like him, a mere human, truly find a place in the heart of someone like her? Before he could respond, Alira stepped back, breaking the spell that had held him captive. She looked up at him, her eyes softening. "But it is impossible, isn't it?" she said, almost to herself. "A human and a Zoreth princess. There are too many rules, too many boundaries." Alex opened his mouth to speak, but the words failed him. How could he explain that he felt the same way? That he, too, had felt a connection to her that went beyond the physical, beyond the political. But before he could gather his thoughts, a shadow fell over them. The moment was broken by the arrival of a Zoreth dignitary, his voice booming as he approached. Alira turned toward him, her face instantly shifting into the serene mask of a princess. The warmth in her eyes faded, and her regal demeanor returned. She glanced back at Alex one last time. "We will speak again," she said softly, her tone a promise and a farewell all at once. "Soon." With that, she was gone, leaving Alex standing alone in the middle of the grand hall, his heart pounding in his chest. What had just happened? What did her words mean? He knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of a journey he could never have prepared for. The path ahead was unclear, and the dangers were great. But for the first time in a long while, Alex felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. The days following the brief but unforgettable conversation between Alex and Princess Alira were filled with tension and uncertainty. The political atmosphere on the planet Varethas had shifted. What had once been a diplomatic mission for Alex was now turning into something far more complex. He found himself caught between two worlds, the human world he knew and the alien world of the Zoreth Empire, a place where rules and customs were as ancient as the stars themselves. Alira had said she wished she could marry him. The words echoed in his mind, haunting him as he went through the motions of his daily duties. What did they mean? Was it just a fleeting thought, a moment of weakness? Or was there something more behind her words? In the days that followed, Alex continued his work as a liaison between the Zoreth Empire and the human delegation. Yet, he found it difficult to focus. His mind kept drifting back to the princess, to her silver-blue skin and those violet eyes that seemed to see right through him. Every time he passed her in the corridors of the palace or caught a glimpse of her from a distance, his heart would race, his thoughts would scatter, and he would feel a strange pull that he couldn't explain. Alira, for her part, was just as consumed by their brief encounter. She had tried to keep her distance, burying herself in the responsibilities of her royal duties. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget the connection they had shared. In a world where her every move was watched, her every action scrutinized, it was rare to find someone who saw her for who she truly was, not just the princess, but the woman behind the title. She would often wander the gardens of the palace, lost in thought. It was during one such moment, as she strolled among the ancient alien trees, that Alex found her again. He had no particular plan to meet her, but the pull between them was undeniable. He had been searching for answers, and it seemed that Alira was the only one who could provide them. "Princess," Alex said quietly, stepping into the garden and catching her attention. Alira turned toward him, her face softening when she saw him. "Captain Drake," she said, her voice a quiet but warm greeting. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wasn't expecting to be here either," Alex replied with a half-smile. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night, about marriage." Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of the word. She glanced around, as if checking to make sure they were alone before stepping closer to him. "We shouldn't talk about this here," she whispered urgently. "There are too many eyes in the palace. You know how it is." Alex nodded, but his heart quickened. He had spent so many years in the military, so many years focused on logic and strategy, that this feeling, this pull towards someone, felt completely foreign to him. But in that moment, standing there with Alira, he realized something. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He couldn't pretend that this was just some passing fancy. There was something between them, something powerful, something that had the potential to change everything. "I can't stop thinking about you," Alex admitted. His voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability there that he rarely allowed himself to show. "I know it's not possible. I know the rules, but I can't help it." Alira's breath hitched as she looked into his eyes. She felt the same way, but the weight of her responsibilities was always there, pressing down on her, reminding her of the impossibility of it all. "Alex," she said softly, her voice full of longing and sorrow, "you don't understand. I can't marry you. It's not just about us. It's about my people, my empire. I'm the heir to the throne. My marriage is a matter of politics, of alliances. It's not a decision I can make on my own." "I don't care about politics," Alex said, stepping closer. "I care about you. This isn't about power or politics. It's about us, and if we don't try, we'll never know what could happen." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if the weight of the world had just been placed on her shoulders. It was true. Her heart ached with the desire to be with him, to escape the confines of her title and just be free, but she couldn't deny the truth. She was the princess, and her duty came first. "Sometimes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "duty feels like a prison." Alex reached out and gently took her hand, his touch sending a spark of warmth through her. "You don't have to be a prisoner, Alira. You can make your own choices. You don't have to let the empire define who you are." For a long moment they stood there, hand in hand, their eyes locked. Alira felt the pull in her chest, the desire to break free, to live her life on her own terms. But she knew the consequences. Her mother, the Empress, would never allow such a union. It would be seen as treason, a betrayal of everything the Zarath people stood for. But was it worth it? Was love worth risking everything? Before she could answer, a voice interrupted their moment. "Princess, Captain Drake, there you are." They both turned to see Zarun, Alira's cousin, standing at the edge of the garden. His presence was commanding, his posture rigid and authoritarian. Zarun was a man of power, and he had always viewed Alira's growing interest in Alex with suspicion. He had long coveted the throne for himself, and a union between Alira and a human would be a threat to his ambitions. "Zarun," Alira said coolly, dropping Alex's hand as if nothing had happened. She immediately slipped back into her royal demeanor, a mask she had worn her whole life. "What is it?" Zarun's eyes flickered between them. He had seen their interaction from afar and knew exactly what was happening. "The Empress has requested your presence," he said, his voice dripping with a coldness that made Alex's skin crawl. "There are matters of state that require your attention." Alira glanced at Alex, her heart heavy with unspoken words. She didn't want this, didn't want to return to the political games, the endless demands of her role. But she had no choice. She had to protect her people. She had to uphold the empire. "I'll be there shortly," she replied, turning to Zaran. Then she looked back at Alex, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and longing. "I have to go." Alex nodded, though every part of him wanted to reach out and stop her. But he knew he couldn't. Not now, not like this. As Alira walked away with Zaran, Alex stood rooted to the spot, his heart heavy. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. He would have to fight for her, for them. But he was willing to do whatever it took. Over the next few days, things took a darker turn. Alex discovered that Zaran's ambitions were not just about the throne. There were whispers of a conspiracy brewing, a plot to overthrow the Empress and take control of the Zorath Empire. Zaran was no longer content with just power. He wanted domination. And if he had to eliminate Alira to get it, he would. Alex couldn't allow that to happen. He had to protect her no matter the cost. Late one night, after the palace had settled into silence, Alex found Alira again. This time there were no distractions, no interruptions. They stood in the same garden where they had first spoken, the moon casting a silver glow over everything. "Zaran is planning something," Alex said quietly, his voice urgent. "I don't know all the details yet, but I know he's a threat to you, to the entire empire." Alira's face paled. "What do you mean?" "I mean he's plotting against your mother. He wants to take the throne and he's willing to go to extreme lengths to do it." Her heart pounded in her chest. "If that's true, we have to stop him." "We will," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "But we have to act fast. There's no time to waste." In that moment, Alira realized just how much was at stake. Her love for Alex had already set her on a dangerous path, but now, the future of her people and her empire was on the line. She would have to choose between duty and her heart, between the empire she was born to rule and the man she had come to love. But for the first time in her life, Alira knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone. Together they would fight. And together they would determine the fate of the Zorath Empire.